Carers Trust, we believe there are at least 1 million young carers, young people aged 17 or under in the UK. That's a huge number. When you think that our survey is showing about 40% of them saying that they're very stressed, and that about the same number are lonely. And we think about what that means in terms of their day-to-day lives. And no young person should be put in that situation.
It's such a difficult thing to do from in terms of that role you've got to take on. But I guess the fact that you're always on, you're always switched on as a young carer. 1 in 5 young carers, according to the survey, working up to 49 hours a week. It's a full-time job, essentially, as a young carer. That, combined with feelings of stress, anxiety, loneliness, are a pretty toxic combination for a young person.
Yes, and we know that young people with caring responsibilities at home are more likely to have their own mental health problems. One of the big issues is that young carers do not always identify themselves to schools. Schools are not asking them whether they are a young carer, and they're not getting the support they need. Now, at Carers Trust, we have a network of local organisations who can provide them with a range of support. So one of the things we want to happen is for young carers to come forward to those local organisations to get more help.
And I guess as well, though, that it fits into a pattern that a young person or might feel that they are maybe a bit of an outsider because they're not involved in the same school clubs, or they've got to go home early, that there's almost a stigma, or they feel there's a stigma with being a young carer, which I guess would make them less willing to maybe identify themselves or say, I need extra support, or I guess that's not necessarily the mentality that young people necessarily want to show to the world, is it?
No, indeed. Young people generally want to blend in, don't they? They want to be exactly the same as their peers. But if their home lives are very different, and they might be supporting a member of their family with disabilities, physical health conditions, or it might be a mental health condition, or indeed other issues, maybe about substance abuse within the home. That's a very different reality for those young people on a day-to-day basis. Now, they're having to try and balance that with their education, with a move to jobs, or with a social life, and that whole entire element of stress, what it is to be a young person, that we're very aware of in day-to-day society.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about the experience of young carers. Some people might think young carers, so they're thinking children, which that you support through the Carers Trust. But of course, young carers becoming young adult carers as well. You've got college, you've got university for some, you've got workplace, you've got bills, you've got taxes to pay, all of those factors that kick in, which, if you've not had a childhood that you've been particularly able to enjoy, to not be able to also enjoy those young adult years as well because of your caring responsibilities, it must be a big weight on the shoulders of these young people.
And when you think about it, our whole health and social care system actually relies on people acting as unpaid carers. We think there's about 7 million unpaid carers in the UK, and as we think about 1 million are young people. However, we know that the long-term implications for those young carers is really can be quite extreme. So on average, it looks like a young carer will achieve 1 lower GCSE grade across their GCSE grades. As you say, they're not always able to progress into higher or further education in the way that we would like them. And of course, moving into jobs can be a real stress if you're having to spend that amount of hours in the family home, providing what can be very intense care.
Yeah, and of course, if the support is there, I guess that journey is made easier. But your survey, again, has found 40% of young carers either never or not often had someone to talk to at school. This idea that you go into a classroom and be experiencing all of these things, the difficulties of being a young carer and not feeling there's someone to talk to. 52% never or not often got support from school about balancing study with caring as well. Just goes to show that there's almost like a black hole in people's knowledge that could make such a huge difference to young carers' life if we put these measures in place.
And at Carers Trust, we believe this is fixable. We believe that every single school should be asking the question. So when a young person moves into a school, say secondary school, age 11, and part of the assessment of that young person's background should be, do they have care responsibilities? However, just doing it once at 11, of course, is not going to be good enough. because family circumstances change all the time. And therefore, it's about the school regularly asking the question and putting in place support so the entirety of the young people within that cohort are aware of unpaid care, and therefore making it easy and welcoming for people to self-identify and to ask for help. Carers Trust then wants to see schools networked into the local care organisations that exist across the UK. Now, they're able to provide respite care, support for breaks for young people. Some will provide funding for items around the house or indeed for training. Others provide employability services. But young people need to know to be able to ask for the support. So if we have one message today, is if you are a young person, go to the Carers Trust website, carers.org, and find your local organisation and ask them for help.
I think it's a really crucial point you just made there, Kirsty, in terms of the experience of the young carers. And I know a lot of teachers, so I know they're not like this, but if some teachers might go, oh, here's something else we're going to have to deal with, here's another issue. But actually that second part of what you just said there goes to show that it's not about a school ultimately taking a full responsibility for that child's caring needs. There's already those organizations in place that a school can draw on their expertise and actually offer that child or young carer something that goes beyond their own training and their own sort of knowledge that they can pick up on an issue as well. So this isn't about lumping more responsibility, I guess, onto teachers who are obviously very much overstretched, but it's about getting a full picture about what that child or young person is going through and knowing the support and signposting the services that are there too.
That's exactly right. GPs, of course, can do the same thing. They need to be aware of the circumstances within a family, and again, can be a very useful way of signposting the services that do exist at that local level. In terms of schools, we don't want to put lots more responsibility in terms of teachers, but it is about signposting, it is about identification, and it is about referral. And if we think what schools are really most we concentrate on educational attainment, we know if young people get the support with their unpaid care, that will reap dividends in how well they do at school and where they go on post-school.
In terms of identifying young carers, I think I'm right in saying that the school register, not the one you do at the start of the day, but the information schools hold about pupils, contains information about various different aspects of their lives. For instance, if they're the child of a member of the armed forces. It would strike me as a simple step to simply add, is this young person a young carer? That knowledge and information would, one, let the school know, but two, also let the rest of the country know how many young carers are out there, how many need support, whether financial support is required in that. And that can all be borne around. That strikes me as a simple thing to add a box onto an Excel spreadsheet. That's something the Department for Education can surely do at a swipe. You
would have thought so. However, we know that this information is not as systematically collected as it should be. There are pockets of good practice out there. In Wales, the Welsh Government, with Carers Trust local partners, have been rolling out young carer identification cards. Carers Trust works in schools in Scotland as well. However, we need this to be systematic at both primary and secondary level, but also within universities, because caring responsibilities do not suddenly stop at the age of 18, and they go into adulthood.
And I guess, Kirsty, I'm going to put a call into the Department for Education, and let's see at least if we can have a meeting maybe with the Education Secretary and make that happen. Because if it's happening elsewhere, England needs to be picking up on that. Let's absolutely make that happen. And just overall, we've been hearing about the experience of young carers, the difficulties that they're having there, and actually you touched on the respite and the opportunity. It's a relentless job, isn't it, being a young carer? So this idea that it's just something you've got to deal with or something you've had to deal with during the pandemic and things will it's an ongoing process. So, looking at this in a snapshot today or tomorrow in a year's time, we're gonna still see these same results, aren't we? Unless we take this decisive action.
Indeed, and we need really good data. And as you said, we need action. In terms of our survey, which took place earlier this year in January and February, 50% of the young people who responded to it said their caring responsibilities have gone up over the last year. When you sort of think about the number of man hours, woman hours, that collectively means across the country. That's an extraordinary labour of love and support that is taking place in family homes.
Absolutely. Kirsty, thank you so much for your time. CEO of the Carers Trust, Kirsty McHugh, and enjoy the rest of Young Carers Action Day.
Thank you very much indeed.